Michigan Out of Doors Online is brought to you in part by Tri-County Logging. Experienced in sustainable forestry practices, Tri-County Logging can help you manage your property by keeping your woods healthy and generate income. Serving southern and mid-Michigan for nearly 50 years, TriCountyLogging.com. Well, hey everyone, welcome to Michigan Out of Doors. If you were lucky enough to watch last week's show, you saw Outdoorama, Big Buck Night East down there in Novi, a ton of fun, great stories. Well, this week we're going to stop in Grand Rapids at the Ultimate Sports Show for Big Buck Night West, some even bigger deer, even bigger stories. Make sure you stay tuned. I'm Jimmy Gretzinger, and it's time for Michigan Out of Doors.
From the first spring rains to the soft summer breeze, dancing on the pine forest floor, the autumn colors catch your eyes, here come the crystal winter skies. It's Michigan, Michigan out of doors.
What a beautiful day in the woods.
Someday our children all will see this is their finest legacy, the wonder and the love of Michigan. As the wind comes whispering through the trees, the sweet smell of nature's in the air. From the Great Lakes to the quiet stream, shining like a sportsman's dream, it's a love of Michigan we all share.
Michigan Out of Doors is presented by Country Smokehouse, a sportsman's meat processor and Michigan destination since 1988, offers a variety of homemade smoked meats and Michigan-made products in-store and online. The Country Smokehouse features an outdoor barbecue and bar. Details at countrysmokehouse.com. By Greenmark Equipment. Greenmark Equipment is a John Deere dealership network in southwest Michigan and northern Indiana. Greenmark provides sales and services to farmers, commercial businesses, large property owners, and homeowners. Information about pricing and products available can be found online at greenmarkequipment.com. By AnglerQuest Pontoons. AnglerQuest is a Michigan-based company building boats designed for comfort and fishing functionality. For more information, anglerquestpontoons.com. By Polar Craft Boats, offering riveted and welded boats for the outdoor enthusiast. Whether you're targeting fish or waterfowl, Polar Craft Boats have several models to choose from that keep you high and dry. For more information, polarcraft.com.
Okay, our first big buck of the night was shot by Tim Jansen in Genesee County. It was scored 152 inches. Tim, this is a beautiful buck. Tell us what happened.
Well, we spent the whole season chasing deer for my son, and we watched him, and he waited till the end of bow season, and we just couldn't get him in close enough. He shot a nice buck, and then I waited till almost the end of gun season, and finally he came out of the corn 240 yards out, and finally gave me a good broadside shot, and it happened real fast. It was exciting. We knew he was there, and ran about 60 yards, and it was a good quick kill. It was awesome.
So you were chasing this deer all season?
Yeah, we chased him the whole season, and I was really hoping he'd get a shot at him, but we just couldn't get him in close enough, and finally the end of gun season we got it done. So
What day? How late was it in the season?
the 26th. Right down to the wire.
And so what were you thinking when Dad got this big buck?
I was amazed.
Because he's just not a very good hunter, or what?
No.
But you were hoping to get him, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Were you still pretty happy for Dad?
Yeah.
And so what'd you do when you got him? Did you take him around town, or what'd you do?
Oh yeah, we called my buddies, and everybody kind of came over and we hang out and had a few cocktails, and we were all excited. We were really happy to get him. This is a great buck. So
Biggest buck you ever shot?
second biggest buck.
Okay, our second big buck of the night is from Ryan Stam. Ryan was hunting in Berry County, 151 2/8 inches. Amazing. So tell us what happened there. You got a shed, I see, too. So you've known about this buck for a little while?
2 years ago, I found this shed 30 yards from my stand, and I've never had a picture of him, never seen him, never had any history with him other than that. And opening day this year, we were sitting until about 10:30 in the morning and hadn't seen a deer. We were leaving, and we just lease a little tiny 10 acres. So he was in between us and the road, and he came popping out 8 yards away and gave me a broadside shot. And when I walked up and seen the split brow, I realized that it was the same one I had the shed on, so it was pretty cool.
Wow. So what were you hunting with?
450.
Okay, so how far did he go when you shot?
He dropped right there.
Oh, wow. So then what happens?
I screamed at my son who was on the other side of the property, and I said, "Big buck down." And yeah, I pretty much went from there. Yeah, it was amazing. Oh.
Absolutely. So that's probably your biggest Michigan buck, I would say.
Yes, for sure. Yep. We just leased the land maybe 3 years ago, and I shot an 11 point with a little drop tine on it last year, so I thought I'd never top that, and got lucky again this year.
Well, actually, I wasn't hunting that morning. I'm a building contractor, and I was home working on job estimates.
Hit him with the car, did you?
No, not quite. No, I look out back. We got a pond up behind our house with a hayfield behind there, and I look, and there's about 10 or 12 does out there with about 100-inch 8-point. Actually, my son passed a few days before that, and there was one off to the side, had his head down, and he picked his head up. I forgot all about my estimates. There was no more paperwork being had, so I had to try to find out a plan to get out there and get a shot at it. It was probably about 200 yards away. So all my stuff is in the barn, my gun and all my clothes and everything. So I tried to sneak out the barn. Well, one of the does busted me. So they all took off running back to the woods, which is about 400 yards back. It's open. The only place there's about a 30-foot strip of tall grass and scrub trees. I thought, I got to get within 200 yards about. So, and he was a good 350 away. So I actually crawled on my hands. I got my rangefinder and the gun and a shooting stick and crawled on my hands and knees through that grass about 100 yards. I'd stop every once in a while and poke my head up, and he was still there eating. He wasn't nervous anymore. And I got to the edge of the hayfield. That's where I figured I had to get a decent shot. And I ranged him. He was 207 yards. And so I shot. He went right down, got back up, went about 10 feet or so, dropped again. And I couldn't see him, but I could see his horns. He was moving still, but he got back up and tripping and falling across the front edge of the woods. I thought, all right, I just need to give him some time. So I went back up, tried to do estimates, tried to work on stuff. And
Really?
I tried. About 9:30, a little after, I thought, well, I'll go back and see what I can see if I find him. So I went walking back to the woods, and I got up to the woods, and he stood up 70 yards away. But he was broadside, looking right at me. I shot. He dropped right there.
November 12th morning, I'm doing the taboo, sitting in your tree stand on your phone, which you're not supposed to do during deer season. But I just saw where my good friend shot a big buck, and I'm like, man, that's nice. I'd like to shoot something like that. And like 5 minutes later, I saw the corner of my eye, about 100 yards, a deer. And then it kept coming in like 10 yards and kind of S-ing in off a bedding area along the river. And it got about 80 yards in. I'm like, oh, that's a nice buck. And
Is that when you put your phone down?
that's when I put my phone down, yeah. And so I got my bow down, and so I'm always in the middle, and I was downwind, and he was S-ing straight in, and he kept going this way, so I'd move my feet this way, and then he'd go this way, then I'd get this, and then I just finally stood in the middle, and he got behind a big tree. And I've actually messed up on bucks like this in the past, being too patient, looking for the perfect shot. So I picked two spots once he got in behind the tree. When he started to go to the right and broadside, and I picked two spots, and I'm like, if he stops in that first one, I'm going to release the arrow. And he stopped right in that spot and released it, and he actually dropped right there.
Wow. That is unbelievable. So then what's going through your mind?
Well, I'm over 50. I'm thinking, how can I get down to my tree stand with my legs shaking and not get hurt? So took my time, put everything away, got down from my tree stand, went over, your emotions started hitting, you start thinking about, your dad taking you hunting, and then you start texting your friends and you show them the deer, and they're like, who shot that? And I'm like, my friends don't have any faith in me, so Yeah, so I said, I just shot that. So I was like, it was pretty cool. So, yeah, you actually stand in the woods and take your time, and you're sitting there for like a half hour just like texting your friends. That's something I didn't do in the 80s. I mean, obviously we didn't have the technology, but yeah, it was pretty exciting.
Brad Heidenreich is our next lucky hunter. This one scores 160. Shot in Calhoun County with a crossbow. Brad, let's hear the story. This is a beautiful buck.
Yeah, so it was a really warm Saturday morning, and we got a south wind, which is kind of rare for the fall. And we have a stand kind of way back in a swamp and some real thick stuff. And I figured, you know, no one's really been seeing a too big of a deer, a shooter, so they got to be hiding somewhere. So I made the walk back there, and right at first light, I could kind of make out a rack in some real thick stuff, just barely. That was about 8 a.m. And then as it started to get lighter, I kind of figured out, ooh, you know, that's a real good deer. And so for about 45 minutes, he was making scrapes and rubs, and then eventually, out of the thick stuff, a spike ran out, and then a smaller 8-point, and then almost like a movie or something, I just could hear, you know, crunch, crunch, crunch. Couldn't see his head. I could just see his feet were in range, and I tried not looking at his rack because I was shaking, you know, and he popped out, and I saw his rack, and, you know, my tree stand started rattling.
How far was he away?
He was about 30 yards. But like I said, it was real thick, so I only had like a little 5x5 window where I could, you know, slip the arrow through. And so I was getting ready to kind of stop him right there in that spot. And wouldn't you know it, he just stopped right there on his own. I shot. I saw the Luminok go right through that little hole and hit him perfect. So got out of there, called one of my buddies and my dad, and we tracked him. And when we found him, it was a lot bigger than I thought. So it was a great day.
We got there late, so then we couldn't get up in the box blind, and so then we just sat on the ground, and we were just sitting right by the blind. And then there's a couple bucks out there already. A doe walked past us, and there's a bunch of deer out there. So we were looking for the biggest buck, and well, this one buck came by, and I took a shot and I missed, and then I took a shot again and I missed, and then all the deer ran back in, and then one deer buck came back out, an 8-point, and my brother took a shot and missed.
All right, so you guys were all in there together? It sounds like a lot of buck fever flying around in that blind.
A little bit, absolutely.
And then my brother loaned me a bullet.
He did. That's a good brother.
And then my dad said, don't shoot that one, shoot the one behind it. So I shot it, dropped in his tracks.
All right, so how did you and your brother decide who got to shoot this one? Were you just taking turns missing bucks all that whole time?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, so Eric, tell me from your perspective, what was going on in your mind?
Well, I mean, it was a very emotional hunt. There was a lot of deer in the field, a lot of action, and I just kind of sat back and let things naturally happen, and of course had to say, okay, Brennan, it's your turn. And there were misses. They were confirmed misses. Okay, I was watching through binoculars. There's, you know, no wounded animals, anything. So finally, it came down to Easton's turn, and you know, of course, his younger brother loaned him a bullet, and the rest is history. I mean, he just dropped it. It was a good shot. And
Okay, Chris Withers has a small moose here. This one scores 161 from Kalamazoo County, shot with a 350 Legend. I don't know if you can see the palmation. Can you kind of turn that a little bit so people can see just how crazy this thing is? Chris, did you know this thing was in there? And tell me what you were thinking when you first saw it.
Well, to be honest with you, I did not know the deer was around. We did, the neighbor had a picture of it on a cell phone, but if you look at that deer head on, you do not see the mass.
Right.
So we saw a nice tall rack, plenty of points, but we didn't know the true nature of the deer. So the hunting story.
Let's hear it.
All right. Went out on the 17th. I knew there was a blizzard rolling in, so I went out early and sat down at 2 p.m., and I didn't see anything. The blizzard's coming in. I'm taking pictures because it's so beautiful, and the snow's just pouring down. And then all of a sudden, the deer, I don't even know how he got there. He's 50 yards in front of me. I was seeing them from the sides, but the ears were kind of blocking the mass, so I didn't still know what I shot. I gave him a quick mat. He stopped in his tracks. I hit him. He did the classic hunch, which I've actually never seen before. And he took off running, got behind a thicket. And that was the last I saw him,
And how far was he when you shot?
about 50 yards.
Now, have you ever seen a deer like this with that much palmation before?
No, anything close to this. I've shot some nice deer, but the score comes from the palmations. But nothing palmated like this whatsoever.
Okay, we've got Kevin Berg and his son Isaiah, who's here for support because he's so proud of his dad. But Kevin, you shot this beautiful buck in Genesee County with your crossbow, 161 and 7/8 inches. So tell us, what day was it and what happened out there?
Opening day bow season. Honestly, I'm lucky. I'm blessed. I was watching some turkeys all day. Honestly, playing on my phone a little bit, just like that other guy was. Seeing some little bucks playing around, fighting a little bit. They took off. I look over my shoulder, and all I see is antlers. I see this guy and another decent buck that we were watching. We've never seen him on the farm or anything. So the fact that he even showed up, I'm like I said, I'm blessed. And once he got within 35 yards, I let it rip. And he took off into the thickest part of the woods, and it took forever to find him. It was a hard one. Everyone else gave up on me, and then as soon as they left, I said, I'm going back out there one more time. Didn't give up. I found him, and they were all about ready to go to bed. And I'm like, no, I need your help. I can't pull him out myself. So my uncle came out, and he grabbed the truck, and we got him. We got him into the freezer. So that's how it went.
Now, how far did he run?
Oh, God. Honestly, I don't really know, but probably 60, 70 yards, into the thickest part of the woods where we were just dragging him out, sweating, out of breath. Like, thank God my uncle came back because I don't know if I could have done it myself,
All right, this buck comes out of Muskegon County, scores 168 and 3/8. Jake Stolberg shot this with a 450 Bushmaster. It is a beautiful buck. Let's hear the story, Jake.
Well, I was heading out to my spot, and I kicked him up, and I watched him run and run and run, probably 1,000+ yards. And I sat down, kind of pouting about it, and he was chasing a doe, and he started pushing her back to me. So for the next 2 hours, I watched him.
2 hours?
2 hours, I watched him come across the field, and he finally got close enough, 260 yards, and that was the end of that. I threw a lot of lead. I hit him 4 out of 5 times, but one of them happened to be in the antler, but it's still intact. So
Yeah, I don't know if you can spin that around so folks can see the. I can't believe this is a shot with a 450 Bushmaster, and it went perfectly through there without. I can't believe it didn't break the whole beam off, let alone just a perfect hole through there.
Right. I would have thought it would have shattered completely.
So your first shot was at, what'd you say, 260?
Yep. I hit him twice at 260, and then he started spinning around, and I sent another one, and that's when I hit him in the horn, and that knocked him over. And then he got up again, and I hit him again. So I wasn't letting him get away.
So 4 out of 5. So then walk me through what happened. Did he was down after that, and then you just walked up, or what?
Yep, he was down after that, and I went up there and called everybody I knew.
So at 260, so did you have shooting sticks? Were you prone? What were you?
I was laying on my belly. I had a log in front of me, and I just put it about 8 inches above his back and let it fly.
Okay, next up we have Taylor Cook with her 171 and 4/8 inch buck in velvet. Gorgeous buck from Jackson County, shot with your 350 Legend during youth season, you said, right?
Yep. September 10th.
September 10th. How old are you, if you don't mind asking?
13.
13 years old. And this gorgeous velvet buck. So tell us about it. Tell us how that whole hunt went down for you.
So we had seen this deer all through July for a long time, and then 10 days before the youth hunt, it disappeared. And then the night before the youth hunt, it reappeared, leaving the property. And then we went out the next day, and it showed up on our cameras, and it went over to the neighbors. And my dad called the neighbor and asked for permission to shoot it, and he said no, because he saw the deer, and he wanted to kill it. And so we waited an hour, and it came in, and it was about 100 yards away, and my dad stopped it, and I couldn't see the deer, because the tree was blocking it. And then we got me readjusted, and then I shot the deer, and I thought I missed, because it ran away like 30 yards, and then it stopped as we were getting ready to shoot again, and it dropped without a second shot.
Wow. Now, have you shot a buck before this one?
Yes.
All right, so you know what's going on out there. So your heart was pounding. What happened? Could you believe you saw this beast coming in?
No, I couldn't. I really couldn't.
So was your dad pretty freaked out too with you?
Yeah. Yeah, we were kind of acting a little stupid because we were just running around trying to get ready.
All right, this is one of the coolest looking bucks I've seen. This is shot by Sydney Rains Pratt. Scores 177 out of Branch County with a 350 legend. Sydney, you said this is your first season hunting?
Yeah, this is my first season actually harvesting a deer. This is my second deer. The day before Thanksgiving, my husband and I went out. I got my first buck. We ate Thanksgiving, took a break. The next day we went out and we got him. So we actually went out looking for a doe. Didn't see any does, so everyone had a fawn with them. Bunch of fawns having zoomies the whole time. We watched them. And then we decided, well, we'll wait for the sun to go down. So I read my book. My husband kept an eye. He was actually supposed to take a deer that night, not me. And then all of a sudden he's like, I see him coming over the hill, I see him coming. And we actually hadn't seen this buck before. A buddy of ours from the UP had him at 10 yards during bow season and didn't take the shot because he didn't have shooting light. So I told him before he left, no worries, I'll get him for you. Ended up getting him for him. So the buck came over the hill, still didn't see him. My husband's like, I see him, how could you not see him? I'm like, I didn't see him. He ended up coming over and all I saw were tines. I'm like, oh, we knew he was a good shooting buck. I didn't know how big he was. So my husband held the window open for me, and he was in a bunch of brush. I could hardly see a little bit of him. Finally, I'm like, okay, I think I have a decent shot. But he was in the thicket. It was really hard to see. I'm like, I don't really want to take this shot. But we had listened to this podcast the night before that said, be a good predator. Take a good shot. So I was like, I'm going to wait. So I waited for him, and he came out 40 yards, perfect, clean shot. I shot him. He literally didn't take another step.
Now, was your husband wanting you to take the shot, or he couldn't get a shot?
If you ask me, if you ask him, he wanted me to take the deer. If you ask me, he knows I'm a better shot. So it is what it is.
And it was getting there, sunset, and I said, well, you know what? I'll get my bleat call and throw a Hail Mary out there. So I got it out, and I bleated and waited 20 seconds, and bleated again 20 seconds. And the last bleat, I started to put it away, and it sounded like a horse coming from behind me. So I just reached over my crossbow and hit the safety off. And when he stepped out and I looked down, I said, oh, my God, he's got to have 20 on him. And he was about 14 yards. So I had to collect myself. I was like, wow, like this. So I collect myself, and he went to the scrape. And then he backed off like he was going to go. I said, oh, I better take him now or I'm not going to get the shot. And I shot him. And he took off and ran about 70 yards, and he stood there with his head down, just wobbling back and forth. And I kept saying, man, drop. You got to fall over. And it's starting to get dark now. And he finally took about 4 steps, laid down. So I got my phone out and called my buddy Mike that I hunt with out there. I said, you got to get out here. He says, well, what'd you do? I said, I shot a buck of a lifetime. Mike and I come back out in the morning. We started gridding. We both gridded 400 yards one way. He says, well, I'm going to go up on the hill where you heard that deer. He says, you grid the rest of this. I said, oh, thanks. I get to go through the thick stuff. Thanks a lot. So I went that way, and all of a sudden I get a text on my phone. He says, I found him. I come running back at the 400 yards. I ran as fast as I could. I ran up that big hill. He come running over there. I'm bent over going like this. He says, you're not going to die on me, are you? I said, no. He says, well, he's right over there. And I walked up there, and I looked at him, and I said, oh, my goodness, what a buck. And I couldn't believe what I'd shot. Just a monster. And my dad had passed away, and he'd told me before he passed that I was going to shoot a monster. And I told him, Dad, I'll just be happy to shoot a buck. He says, you better listen to me because you're going to shoot a monster. And this is him.
It's 10:30, quarter to 11. My phone starts blowing up. I have chores to do on the farm. My mom wants my help. My uncle's needing me. It's like, all right, I'll get down. It's a half-hour walk up to the truck. So I start on my way. Well, on the south side of the lake bottom, there's a culvert where the creek runs through. And I just stopped because we have beavers there, and they like to dam it up and flood things out. And as I'm looking up and down the creek, I didn't see any beavers, but all of a sudden a deer jumped the creek into the lake bottom. I'm like, well, what spooked that deer? I stood there for a minute, and it sounded like a train coming through the weeds. I see the first doe bust out. I drop down to one knee because I'm in the clearing. One doe goes by. Two does go by. Then a third doe was a nice-sized doe, and right behind that doe, that third doe, all I could see was the left side of the horns, and I thought, that's a definite shooter. So when he ran by at 18 yards, I pulled up that Bushmaster. I was hunting the lake bottom. I'm set for a 100-yard shot. All I could see was brown through the scope. So now I got to look down the side of the barrel to squeeze one off. And admittedly, I hit him a little farther back than I wanted, because it took his hind end out from under him. It broke his leg. He tumbled right down. He rolled over. Now I'm stepping out of the clearing to the edge of the field. As I'm racking another shell, now the mass gets me. The second shot never touched him. I totally whiffed on it. As I'm looking down to rack a third shell, I look up. That buck's not in the field anymore. Where in the world? There's no way he ran off. He managed to drag himself about 15 more yards right to the fence row. He was about 15 feet from my youngest boy, Stan, who didn't want to go hunting with Dad that morning. He had a late night the night before. So I walk up on it. I could not believe what I was seeing. And I'm just taking it all in, and it's like, oh my goodness.
Thanks to all the participants and all the folks that came to watch, and who knows, maybe we'll see you on stage next year.
Michigan Out of Doors is presented by.
Do you dream of somewhere bigger than your backyard? You can get there with Greenstone. Whether you want to hunt, fish, hike, or just watch the sunset, we're ready to help you own your place in the great outdoors. To learn more, visit greenstonefcs.com.
By Alta Equipment Company, providing sales, rentals, service, and parts because uptime matters. From earth moving to landscaping and light construction, Alta offers over 50 brands across 7 Michigan locations to serve you. More information online or 844-GO-2-ALTA. By RBM Jigs, a Michigan-based company serving ice fishing anglers around the state and throughout the country. Specializing in ice fishing gear, RBM Jigs manufactures tungsten jigs, soft plastics, and much more. Online at lakeeffectlures.com.
When I wander far away, a dream stays with me night and day. It's the road that leads to my home state. I am a Michigan man.